Hello! This is part 2 of a 5-part series on the Spanish subjunctive. In this video we're gonna cover the 85% of the essential subjunctive triggers. In the previous part 1 video we learned the basic structure of a Spanish subjunctive. You can find this video right here. I advise you to watch it first if you haven't yet. And even if you did watch it, I would still like to do a quick recap just to make sure we're on the same page. Don't forget to grab a free PDF, take the quiz, because oh man, you're gonna need that extra practice. Now let's begin. Chapter 0. Spanish Subjunctive Part 1 Recap. There's only 3 things you need to remember. Number 1. The Spanish language has 3 grammatical moods: indicative, imperative, and subjunctive. Indicative mood is used to talk about facts and reality, something we perceive as true. Imperative mood is used to give commands. And lastly, subjunctive mood is used to describe feelings, wishes, and doubts about other people's actions. That is something that we do not know for certain. Lucky for us, in order to master 85% of subjunctive usage, we only need to juggle between indicative and subjunctive moods, so we won't be using imperative mood. Not in today's video at least. Number 2. In order to form subjunctive, you need to have the following: 2 subjects, 2 verbs, and a conjunction que between them to separate the main and subordinate clauses. This is something that we know as the 2-subject structure. For example, yo espero que Marcos coma más. Look at it. Here we have yo and Marcos as 2 subjects, esperar and comer as 2 verbs, and the conjunction que between them. The verb in the main clause has to be conjugated in a normal indicative way, and the verb in the subordinate clause has to take subjunctive conjugation. And don't forget that in order for this to be a subjunctive structure, the subject number 1 has to express a wish, emotion, or doubt, some uncertainty about subject number 2's actions. So let's say we have a sentence: Yo entiendo que tú eres colombiano. Here, subject number 1 seems pretty sure about subject number 2 being Colombian. Since we talk about facts in this sentence, there's no need for subjunctive anywhere, as we don't have a subjunctive trigger. That leads us to number 3. All we need to do to conjugate verbs into the present subjunctive form is to switch the verb endings. That is, AR verbs take ER endings, and ER and IR verbs take AR endings. So when we say yo espero que Marcos coma más, we know that coma is the present subjunctive form of the verb comer for the 3rd person singular. For now we are only covering simple conjugations, so that you don't lose your brains. Are we good? That was a short recap. If you feel like you need a full video where we go into more detail, you can find it right here and in the video description. Having said that, it's time to get triggered. So what is a trigger? Look at the sentence again. Yo espero que Marcos coma más. When we talk about a trigger, we're describing a specific verb or maybe a phrase that is located in the main clause. This verb is a signal that tells us that whichever verb comes after the conjunction que in the subordinate clause has to be conjugated in a subjunctive form. What's important here is to remember the definition of the subjunctive mood. The subject number 1 expresses a wish, hope, or doubt about the subject number 2's actions. In our case, we hope Marcos eats more. In this sentence, the verb esperar is our trigger. If you feel confused, please just bear with me. Lucky for us, we don't always have to think about it so deeply. That's because there's an acronym that will contain 85% of essential triggers that will cover most of your subjunctive needs. This acronym is called WEIRDO. I know you're tired of acronyms, but I couldn't find a better way to simplify it for this topic, so we'll have to go with the official one. WEIRDO is an acronym that stands for wishes and desires, emotions, impersonal expressions, recommendations and requests, doubt and denial, and Ojalá. When you look at all this, I know you wanna throw up, but I will politely ask you not to. Each one of these trigger categories represent an uncertainty in one way or another, and I hope you remember that the subjunctive mood is all about expressing uncertainty towards someone else's actions. WEIRDO triggers are nothing but the list of verbs and phrases that, in most cases, will immediately signal to us when to use subjunctive, thus making the whole process much easier to deal with. Now let's learn how they work. Chapter 1. Wishes and desires. This category is used when you want to express a wish for someone else to do something. The main subjunctive triggers here are the verbs esperar, desear, querer, and preferir. Here are some examples for each. Espero que tengas un buen día. Here we have subject number 1, me, wishing the subject number 2, you, a good day. The trigger verb esperar is conjugated in a normal present indicative form, and the verb tener takes the present subjunctive form. The verb tener, to have, is an exception, so it has to be conjugated a bit differently. Here's how it looks like for present subjunctive form. Yo tenga, tú tengas, él, ella, usted tenga, nosotros tengamos, vosotros tengáis, ellos, ellas tengan. As a reminder, we'll dive deeper into conjugations in the next videos. Don't worry too much about it for now. Just know that if the verb conjugation looks weird to you, it means it's conjugated in a subjunctive form. Next example is Marta desea que su hijo estudie medicina. Subject number 1, Marta, expresses desire for her son, subject number 2, to do something, in our case, study medicine. Next, quiero que vengas a la fiesta. Querer works exactly the same way as desear, there's nothing crazy here. The only thing I'll mention is that vengas is the present subjunctive form of the verb venir, which is also an exception. Here's how it works. Yo venga, tú vengas, él, ella, usted venga, nosotros vengamos, vosotros vengáis, ellos, ellas vengan. As you can see, it looks very similar to the verb tener. I thought I would mention it as well, so that you slowly get used to the exceptions. Last verb is preferir. Prefiero que hablemos mañana. Expressing the preference is also something that triggers subjunctive, but it triggers it only for the second subject, in our case nosotros. That's why we have hablemos and not hablamos. Just as a reminder, all these trigger verbs do the whole triggering process only if there's two subjects in a sentence. For example, when I say prefiero comer carne, I am describing one subject doing two things. In this case, the first verb, preferir, should be conjugated in a normal indicative way, and the second verb has to take the basic infinitive form. Infinitive, not subjunctive. I just want to make sure that you understand that these trigger verbs we're talking about in this video will trigger subjunctive only when we have a two-subject structure. Do not forget that the subject number 1 needs to express a wish towards subject number 2's actions. If we don't have this relation between two subjects, we do not have subjunctive. Test number 1. I have a sentence that I want you to help me translate in Spanish. It would make me very happy. The sentence is, I want you to help me. 3, 2, 1, time's up. We have two subjects, me and you. We have two verbs, to want and to help. The verb to want expresses a wish, which means it's one of our trigger verbs. And the fact that we express a wish about someone else's actions confirms that we have a subjunctive sentence in front of us. So what do we do now? 1. We can cry like a little bitch, or 2. We can get to work. I want is quiero, or yo quiero if you want to be precise. This is our main clause. And for the subordinate clause, we have the verb to help, which is ayudar in Spanish. But since this part has to be conjugated in a subjunctive form, we have to switch the endings from ayudas to ayudes. So what we have at the end is quiero que me ayudes, or yo quiero que tú me ayudes, if that makes it easier for now. Good job! Let's get to the next letter in a weirdo acronym. Chapter 2. Emotions and feelings. Emotions are also subjective, that's why they also count as subjunctive triggers when directed towards someone's actions, or rather when someone's actions make us feel something. Some popular verbs include alegrar, molestar, sorprender, dar miedo, gustar, and cantar. What's important with these verbs is that it's very popular to use them with the indirect object pronouns. These are the pronouns that are used to indicate to whom something is happening. These pronouns are me, te, le, nos, os, les. If you don't understand what I'm talking about right now, here are two videos that cover both direct and indirect object pronouns. That should make things clear. Now let's go over each verb and see how they work within the subjunctive structure. Me alegra que Carlos esté bien. Me alegra translates as I'm happy, but literally it means it makes me happy. We are being happy about someone's actions. In this case, it's the fact that Carlos is okay. Just like before, our trigger is me alegra, and Carlos being okay is our subordinate clause, which comes after the conjunction que, as always. Nothing new when it comes to the subjunctive structure, just a different trigger. Now let's proceed. The next emotion verb is molestar. Nos molesta que llegues tarde. Same idea, we express emotion about someone else's actions. Next verb is sorprender. Me sorprende que viajes tanto. Nothing crazy, right? Let's do another test. I thought, why go over all the emotion verbs myself if you can do that for me? You won't mess this up, will you? The sentence I want you to translate to Spanish is we like that you celebrate with us. The two verbs I want you to use here are gustar and celebrar. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Feel free to pause the video. And that's enough. What we have is nos gusta que celebres con nosotros. Nos gusta means we like, or technically it means it pleases us. And what makes us feel this emotion is the fact or action of you celebrating with us. That's why our subordinate clause uses celebres and not celebras. I choose to believe you did a good job. If not, no worries. Let's continue to the next letter. Chapter 3. Impersonal Expressions. In this section we will be talking about fixed phrases that always trigger subjunctive. Some of them are es importante que, es necesario que, es mejor que, es posible que, es probable que, es bueno o malo que, es raro extraño que, es una lástima que, es ridículo que. Let's stop for a second and think about why they trigger subjunctive. Each one of these phrases expresses either an opinion or some sort of judgment. What's important for us is that neither of those things are facts. If it's not a fact, then it has to be subjunctive. As you can see, all these expressions follow the rule S plus adjective plus que. Should be easy to remember, right? We're gonna go over a couple of them right now, but I want you to keep in mind that there is many more impersonal expressions like that, links for which will be provided in the video description. You will encounter most of them in the wild one way or another. All you need to remember is that they trigger subjunctive and therefore require special attention. So far so good? Let's take es importante que as our first example. Es importante que llegues a tiempo. The subjunctive structure is preserved as always. Maybe it's not obvious at first, but es importante has our first subject, that is it, and the first verb, which is, both of which come from a simple es. This is our main clause, conjugated in a normal indicative form, and to llegues expresses the subordinate clause, conjugated in subjunctive form. It might not be obvious that we have a two-subject structure here at the first glance, because we're not talking about me or Carlos. In this example and others in this impersonal expressions section, we are expressing a generic rule or opinion about how someone else should act or behave, which is exactly what subjunctive is. Let's try another example. Es posible que llueva. Again, just a generic way to express an opinion about something that might happen. What is it that may happen? It might rain. The verb llover, to rain, is conjugated as llueve in an indicative way, but in subjunctive we have to replace the ending which gives us llueva. The next example is Es extraño que Martín no esté aquí. It works the same way as all other impersonal expressions, therefore I don't believe there's a need to cover all of them. Now, what I do want to talk about is some unexpected behavior with impersonal expressions. Let's look at these three sentences. Es cierto que viene. Es obvio que es inteligente. Es verdad que está enfermo. Remember how I said that as long as the adjectives express an opinion or some other subjective bullshit that is not a fact, then it should trigger subjunctive? Let's look closely at these sentences. Do you see any verbs in the subordinate clause conjugated in subjunctive form? Neither do I. Now look at the adjectives. Do they express the required subjectivity? No, they do not. On the contrary, even though these adjectives are surrounded by the impersonal expression structure S plus adjectives plus que, they state nothing but the facts. If the main clause expresses a fact, then it simply means that it is not a subjunctive trigger. Therefore, the verb in the subordinate clause has to stay in a normal indicative form, just like the verb in the main clause. Let me guess, you think this is fucked up. Hey everyone, come take a look, we got a person with an opinion here. Wanna see something even more messed up? How about instead of saying es cierto, es obvio and es verdad, we'll flip them and say no es cierto, no es obvio and no es verdad. What do you think happens now? Does it look like these expressions still show facts and certainty? No, they do not. When these particular expressions are used in a negative form, they become nothing but the opinions again, and that means that we're back into having to use the subjunctive conjugation in a subordinate clause. Let's compare them side by side so it's easier to understand. Es cierto que viene, no es cierto que venga. Es obvio que es inteligente, no es obvio que sea inteligente. Es verdad que está enfermo, no es verdad que esté enfermo. This is a trap, and I understand that it's probably hard to digest right now. All you need to remember for now is that the adjectives cierto, obvio and verdad trigger subjunctive only when they are used in a negative form. Please don't forget about the additional materials in the video description. They include articles on situations like this. Test number 3. I have 3 sentences for you. Es probable que Carlos esté aquí. Es cierto que Carlos está aquí. Es importante que Carlos esté aquí. Can you tell me which sentence is indicative here? Yes, indicative, not subjunctive. 3, 2, 1 is the second one, right? But why? We can clearly see the first and the last sentence are subjunctive just because the verb estar is conjugated in a subjunctive form. But why? It's because both es probable que and es importante que express an idea or an opinion, neither of which are facts. In the second sentence though, we have es cierto que, which expresses exactly that, a fact or a perception of a truth, and at least until proven wrong. So here, since it's not a subjunctive trigger, there's no need for us to conjugate anything in the subjunctive form. So the verb estar should stay in a normal indicative way. I hope it makes sense. Now it's time to continue to the next letter in the WEIRDO acronym. Chapter 4. Recommendations, requests and commands. When you're asking, telling or recommending someone else to do something, that also triggers subjunctive. Some of the trigger verbs in this section are recomendar, sugerir, aconsejar, pedir, necesitar, exigir, prohibir, mandar or ordenar, permitir or dejar, rogar, decir. You can recognize the verb necesitar from the previous video. Again, everything works the same way as before. Let's go over a couple of examples. Te recomiendo que estudies más. First subject is recommending the other to do something. Makes sense, right? Next example. Les pedimos que lleguen temprano. We ask someone else to do something. One more. El profesor prohíbe que usemos celulares. The professor prohibits or forbids others to do something. Perfect. Other verbs work exactly in the same way. For a complete list with more examples, check the PDF and the video description. There's one edge case though that we should cover in more detail, and that's the verb decir, to say. Look at these two sentences. Carlos dice que viene and Carlos dice que vengas. The problem with the verb decir is that it can be used both as a fact and as a command. In the first sentence, Carlos simply tells us the information. Not only it's a fact, but it's also only one subject, Carlos doing both saying and coming. Since we only have one subject, it cannot be subjunctive. That's why both verbs decir and venir stay in the indicative form. However, in the second sentence, Carlos is giving you a command to come. It can be a command or a recommendation, which will depend on the tone of your voice. That will decide how we can translate it to English. For example, when I say Carlos tells you to come, it sounds kinda harsh, like a command, but if I say Carlos says you should come, it sounds more like a suggestion, both of which will trigger subjunctive. Like I said, the translation in cases like this will depend on the situation you are currently in. Another test. Fill in the blanks. My mom is asking me to clean my room. All you need to do is to conjugate the verbs pedir and limpiar correctly. You've got 3 seconds. Time skip. So what do you got? My mom is asking me to do something. Since we have a two-subject structure here and asking and requesting falls under the subjunctive triggers, we know that the first verb, the one that does the asking, has to be conjugated in a normal indicative way, and the second verb will take the subjunctive. That gives us mi mamá me pide que limpie mi cuarto. Did you get that right? Of course you did. I didn't doubt you for a second.
I did.
Shut up! Chapter 5. Doubt and Denial. This one should be easy, because this section is all about the uncertainty, and I don't know if you've noticed, but uncertainty has been all we've been talking about in this series. When we express doubt or denial about anything, it means that we don't know for certain, and that uncertainty triggers subjunctive. The verbs we're gonna need are dudar, no creer, no pensar, no estar seguro, negar, no es cierto. You can see how most of the verbs here are used in a negative form. Don't worry about it for now. Let's start from simple examples, the verb dudar and negar. Dudo que Carlos esté aquí, and ella niega que Max coma mucho. Simple doubt and simple denial that trigger subjunctive in the subordinate clause. Nothing crazy, right? Now let's see how other verbs work. The biggest trap of them all are the verbs pensar and creer, because just like some of the impersonal expressions we've just learned in a previous chapter, they trigger the subjunctive only when used in a negative form. Look at this. Creo que es verdad. Everything normal, the verb creer when in positive form doesn't trigger anything. Even though it might sound like you are not sure about something, it will always be a normal indicative structure. However, when used in a negative form, no creo que sea verdad, suddenly our subjunctive gets triggered like me at the end of Game of Thrones. The verb pensar works exactly the same way. Pienso que viene and no pienso que venga. The first sentence expresses a fact, and the second, negated one, shows doubt and uncertainty. Don't try to think too much about it. With time it will become natural. Same goes for the phrases no estar seguro que and no es cierto que. When used in positive sentences, they literally express being sure and certain about whatever, which will not trigger any subjunctive. However, their negative forms express doubt and uncertainty, and that's right up our alley. Phase test number 5. Here's the phase, and here's the test. Which sentence is correct? Marta duda que es verdad, or Marta duda que sea verdad? 3, 2, 1, ding ding, it's number 2. The verb dudar triggers subjunctive, and that's why it's sentence number 2. It should be sea verdad, not es verdad. That was way too easy. I'm getting old. Chapter 6. Ojalá. I know what you're thinking. What the fuck is Ojalá? And I would tell you that this is a Christian music channel and we don't fucking swear here. But instead I'm just gonna tell you how Ojalá works in Spanish. First of all, Ojalá can be used both as a conjunction, that's a connecting word, and an interjection, that's an exclamation. In both cases it will be translated as I hope so, hopefully, if only, let's hope. Let's start with the interjection as it matters less to us. Escuché que mañana llega tu hijo. Ojalá. This is nothing but showing some emotion as a response to what someone said to us. No subjunctive needed. Now let's see how it works when it's used as a conjunction. Ojalá llueva mañana. I hope you remember that hoping or wishing for something automatically triggers subjunctive. This is literally how espero que works. Espero que llueva mañana. See, same stuff. The only reason why Ojalá is considered to be a special case, which makes it a part of the WEIRDO acronym, is the fact that it can be used with or without conjunction que after it. This means you can say both Ojalá John gane mucho dinero and Ojalá que John gane mucho dinero. Using Ojalá without conjunction que is considered to be a modern way of using it in Spanish. Basically, the idea is that it already has que inside it, but you can still use it with que if you want, it's not a problem. It just sounds more formal, that's all. The most important thing to remember is that when Ojalá is used as conjunction, it will always trigger subjunctive. We are almost done. Now it's time to bring it all together. WEIRDO is an acronym that contains a list of verbs and phrases that signal immediately to us when to use subjunctive. Every single WEIRDO trigger has one thing in common. You are expressing what's in your head about someone else's actions. You're not stating facts, you're stating feelings, wishes, doubts, and opinions. That uncertainty is what triggers subjunctive. Let's quickly go through each letter one more time. Chapter 1. Wishes and desires. When you want someone else to do something, you can use verbs such as querer, esperar, desear, preferir. Quiero que vengas. Chapter 2. Emotions and feelings. When someone else's actions make you feel something, you can use verbs alegrar, molestar, sorprender, and dar miedo. Me alegra que estés bien. Chapter 3. Impersonal expressions. These expressions show opinions and judgments, not facts. Some of them are es importante que, es posible que, es necesario que, es mejor que. Es importante que llegues. But remember the trap. Es cierto, es obvio, es verdad use indicative because they state facts. However, if you make them negative, it will bring back the doubt and trigger subjunctive again. Chapter 4. Recommendations, requests and commands. When you're telling someone to do something, use the verbs recomendar, pedir, sugerir, necesitar, prohibir, mandar, permitir, and rogar. Te recomiendo que estudies. And watch out for the verb decir. It triggers subjunctive only when it's a command, not when it's just reporting information. Chapter 5. Doubt and denial. When you are uncertain about something, use the verbs dudar, no creer, no pensar, negar, no estar seguro. Dudo que venga. The big trap here is that creer and pensar que use indicative, that is certainty. But no creer and no pensar que use subjunctive because that expresses a doubt. Positive belief means indicative, negative belief means subjunctive. Chapter 6. Ojalá. This is the special one. It means I hope and it will always trigger subjunctive. The cool thing about it is that you can use ojalá with or without que. Both options are correct. Ojalá llueva mañana and ojalá que llueva mañana. How are you feeling? It's hard, hey? We're done with WEIRDO triggers. For the most part, it's challenging not because it's hard to use subjunctive, that is, conjugate the verbs correctly, but simply because of the crazy amount of triggers we need to learn. You are probably thinking right now, oh my god, how am I gonna remember all that? And that will be your first mistake. Do not try to remember every single trigger right now, you will burn out. This video is to show you how to recognize the subjunctive structure and what makes it such. All these verbs and phrases will come naturally to you, I promise. The main advice is same as always, just engage with the Spanish-speaking world and you will internalize all this subjunctive crap without even realizing. Read more, watch more, listen more, engage! And whenever you feel like you need a refresher, I got you. Download the PDF and take the quiz. Use the video chapters for quick and easy navigation. Don't forget about the video description with the links to all types of materials and interactive lessons. You will be fine as long as you're not being stupid to yourself. Your second mistake would be not subscribing to my channel. I mean, come on people, show some love, goddamn. Now that we've learned WEIRDO triggers, I must say, congrats. Now you know the essential 85% of subjunctive triggers. What about the other 15%, you ask? That will be the focus of the next video, where we'll go beyond WEIRDO, covering the most advanced and unhinged type of situations that will also trigger subjunctive. For now, just focus on getting comfortable with WEIRDO triggers. The previous video can be found here, and the next video will be right here once it's done. Thank you for watching and see you soon!